Well, I think the whole world has gone nuts for cryptocurrency because Stephan just bought Bitcoin. What's going on, everybody? It's Chris with Committed 3D Tech. You heard that right. Stephan bought Bitcoin. He has been notoriously against cryptocurrency for years now. For those of you who don't know who Graham is, he became a millionaire at 27 after being a real estate agent and investing in real estate. He's a great example. He started 18 years old, only making 30 grand, became a real estate agent, and became a millionaire in less than 10 years. He sold over $200 million worth of real estate properties, I believe. And by that time, I think he had 3 rental properties of his own. I personally think that he has a lot of great tips and tricks to be financially independent. And we'll talk about some of the reasons, but I think he's actually better than some of like the older finance guys. Peter Schiff. I know that was subtle, right? And by the way, on the off chance that you're actually watching this video, Graham, you're one of my favorite YouTubers of all time. Who knows, maybe you would like to do a cryptocurrency segment, something that I could post on my channel, maybe coffee with Graham. I don't even drink coffee, and I know you're super frugal, but we probably could spare one of your 20-cent iced coffees just for the effect of the video. If you would like to see something like that, tag Graham. Who knows, maybe we can get him interested in doing something like that. So in this video, I'm going to react to Graham's video of him purchasing Bitcoin. So make sure you smash the like button and let's get to the video.
Well, get ready for the price of Bitcoin to collapse into the abyss of nothing because I just bought some Bitcoin.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like 12 days ago, Bitcoin was at $40,000. So yeah, it's your fault, Graham. Everybody blame Graham for the fall of Bitcoin.
Seriously, for some reason, when it comes to these things, it seems like the entire universe is conspiring against me, and everyone is waiting to sell at the precise moment that I buy in. But despite that, I said what I would do a week ago, and I bought it. Or, as some would prefer me to say, I have diversified into another asset class. This definitely was not a decision out of FOMO. It wasn't me trying to rush in to make as much money as possible, and it wasn't me just dipping in my toes to see what it's like. I just placed a portion of my portfolio into Bitcoin, and now it's there to stay.
So I did want to say here, while I don't think he completely FOMO'd in and he did buy the dip, which is a crypto veteran move, I can't help but think that because Bitcoin spiked 2 times really hard in the past half decade, that contributed somewhat to Graham diversifying his portfolio. So, hey, we won't call it FOMO, but I think that's what's happening with a lot of people as they recognize the earning potential of Bitcoin. And even though they're not getting in at the best point, it could easily be misconstrued as FOMO.
Bitcoin. Okay, so let me explain what I've just done. I don't know why, but it feels like I'm a guilty kid trying to explain himself here, but a lot of this started a few weeks ago. This was around the time where it began increasing to the $20,000 range. And of course, when any newsworthy event happens that's in any way related to investing and making money, I get thousands of comments asking for my thoughts or to make a video talking about Bitcoin. Okay, fine, I'll make a video about Bitcoin, and so it begins. In a recent video, I shared my thoughts, I shared my concerns, I was very critical with several aspects, and I said I wouldn't mind placing a very small percentage of my total portfolio into Bitcoin just as another way to diversify. I thought it was a fairly well-balanced, neutral standpoint. I didn't exactly endorse anyone buying Bitcoin, but I didn't exactly dismiss it either.
Come on, Graham. How many videos do you have where you rolled your eyes and said, Bitcoin?
And I would say there's a few main points that people disagreed with. The first was my claim that cryptocurrencies are subject to price manipulation, and I used the 2017 run-up as an example that pushed up the price right before it dropped 80%. Now, the counter-argument that many people used is that, sure, cryptocurrencies can be manipulated, but so could any other currency, and that's confirmed. The most recent example would come from JP Morgan, who has fined almost $1 billion for manipulating the price of precious metals.
Yeah, and that's a great point, is because I think there is this stigma around Bitcoin that it's filled with criminals and scams and price manipulation. But the fact of the matter is, fiat currency in cash is still used for criminals more than any other currency. On top of that, you think about not just gold, but also securities as well. There are tons of pump and dumps, and while the SEC can do an okay job of monitoring them, there are a ton of companies that get away with it and steal money from good, wholesome people.
Next, we got to talk about something that nearly everybody called me out for, and that were my thoughts on regulation. I said that the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network proposed a new regulation that would require people identify themselves and their personal information upon request when transferring more than $3,000. My thought was that this somewhat gives up the anonymity that many people like about Bitcoin to begin with. And many people chimed in to say that sure, even though it can be tracked, everything could be tracked. And they believe that regulation is one step closer to legitimizing it for investors. And you know what? I think that's a good point, and I agree.
So this is another point. While the OGs of Bitcoin did want decentralization, anonymity was not the number one reason they did it. They did it because they didn't want a centralized entity controlling their money. They didn't want it determining the market value, and they didn't want to have to worry about things like inflation. And on top of that, things like KYC, or Know Your Customer, allows for cryptocurrency companies to help avoid some of that price manipulation and those scams that could happen from doubling up on accounts and things like that. While yes, too much regulation would be a bad thing, I think the majority of the masses think that there is a lot of safety in regulation while still giving them the security of decentralization.
So after that, we got to talk about value. I say that traditional investments are backed by an income-producing company with a tangible product or service that posts revenue and profits for its investors. Not so much with Bitcoin, which is really trading at its price just because it's trading at its price. The way I see it is that there's no specific reason why it's trading at $40,000 instead of $20,000 or instead of $60,000. It just is. Now, the counter-argument that other people have made is that
it's called supply and demand, Graham. You know this. It's the same reason that gold is priced the way it is
that there is value in the network effect of Bitcoin, and that the more people use it, the more trust is built and the more likely you are to get the price that you ask. There's also value in supply and demand, as more people demand an alternative asset to their money. There's also value in the institutional belief of the concept, and that's something worth paying attention to. As Tom Heavey pointed out, MicroStrategy has bought $1 billion worth of Bitcoin recently. Grayscale's Bitcoin investment fund raised over $3 billion last quarter, and data has shown that large institutional investors are driving a lot of the demand.
Which is a huge point to the value that it brings, is because these large entities want the service that Bitcoin brings, which is decentralization. That is a big part of the value driving the supply and demand. Now, of course, I will say that some of these big entities joining into cryptocurrency is actually something that we all should be watching out for. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do. I'm going to be coming out with a video later this week on a huge Bitcoin bubble that is going to be coming because of the shift in power in cryptocurrency. So make sure you do that. Also, if you haven't, smash the like button for this video.
Now, the argument against this is that maybe some of those institutional investors are more like speculators who don't really care about Bitcoin at all, and they just want to make as much money as possible in as little time as possible. And still, none of the 10 largest asset managers have bought Bitcoin yet. However, I don't doubt the bigger players are getting in the game, and that's worth addressing. And for something so new, you should not be buying it if you can't handle the fluctuations in price.
That's something that I advocate to everybody. You should not be investing more money in cryptocurrency or any risky project that you couldn't afford to completely lose. I say that all the time. That's how I personally handle my finances as well. It's really, really important to be investing amounts that you're comfortable with.
So here's where I stand on all of this. One, I think it's always a good idea to be open to criticism, never take it personally, and always be open to hearing another viewpoint, even if you disagree with it. I fully acknowledge that when it comes to this space, I have barely dipped my toes in compared to the involvement of others. So I fully expect that I would have a lot to learn in this space.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this more in a few minutes. But that's one thing that I think Graham did really well when he actually was interviewed by CNBC. Then Kevin OLeary from Shark Tank actually reacted to his video. And then afterward, they met up, and Graham has actually taken a lot of advice from Kevin, who is a master when it comes to not just finance, but also being a venture capitalist. And so I think Graham has done a really great job of learning from his mistakes and from others' experience and mistakes.
It might not sound like a lot, but the real catalyst was when the price went to $40,000 and then suddenly out of nowhere dropped down to $30,000. So once that happened, I figured, you know what, why not? I bought into Bitcoin around the low 32,000 range, and then I also bought some Ethereum around $1,100. And then I went with a 60-40 split between the two. To me, this is an amount that I'm not gonna lose any sleep over. It's not gonna bother me if it drops 50 to 80%, and it's something where if I lose all of it, I'll be totally okay. And even though losing 1% of my portfolio would be a disappointment, it's not the end of the world. That means I'm not going to be concerned with volatility, it's not going to stress me out, but I could still have a small amount invested just in the event it proves to do well long term.
That's extremely valuable information. Like I said, you shouldn't be investing anything that you can't lose completely. I have a ton of respect for influencers in the crypto industry. It's tough. It's a really tough gig. But what I will say is, when there was that huge pullback from Bitcoin from 40,000 to 30,000, some influencers like Crypto Finally on Twitter had a literal meltdown. I always say this, but I think it's really important to understand that people on YouTube shouldn't be giving you financial advice. It's not their responsibility, it's your responsibility to invest what you are comfortable investing. Once again, don't invest anything that you're not comfortable losing. Absolutely every single penny of it.
But the thing is, as I've gotten older and hopefully a little wiser, the more I valued the peace of mind in owning a little bit of everything. Now, even though I did end up buying 2 properties last year, the vast majority of my money went into the stock market. My current goal is to have as much money invested in the stock market as I do in real estate, just so I'm not too reliant on one asset class over another. I've also taken it a step further and become an angel investor in 3 startup companies. 2 of them I can't mention quite yet, but the one I could talk about is a savings account, Yada Bank, which is a new concept where users can earn up to $10 million. Link down below in the description for anyone who wants to try that out. Shameless plug there, but alongside that, I'm also trying to diversify my income. I've started 2 other YouTube channels completely independent of this one. I've launched a mentorship group. I'm soon announcing my coffee company, and I have another little something in the works that I could probably talk about in about a month or so. This makes me feel so much more relaxed that no matter what happens to one of them, I'm still gonna have a whole bunch left over to fall back on. And when I feel less stressed about this stuff, I just tend to do better, more productive work. Go figure.
When it comes to your entire asset portfolio, you don't want to risk it for the biscuit, but there have to be calculated risks. And when you diversify your income streams, you really open yourself up for opportunities, because let's say you invest in 20 different projects. If one of those goes big and then the other 19 bust or just break even, then you've ended up net positive. Like Graham, I'm a huge fan of diversification, and I'm a huge fan of risk management, which means taking calculated risks.
And lastly, let me just say this. Many of my original thoughts on Bitcoin remain unchanged. I still think it could potentially collapse down to nothing. I also think it might head to 100,000. I don't think any amount of charting or analysis is going to accurately predict when and where this will end up. So I would never advocate anyone buying in an amount that they're not fully prepared to lose. In the big picture of investing, Bitcoin is still very new. I still think 12 years of history is not enough to estimate a value 30 to 50 years from now. There's so many unknowns that could really throw a curveball at this at any moment, and that's something to be prepared for. I also believe there's no harm in taking profits if you're overly invested and you have too much of your portfolio in a volatile asset like this.
This is something that I think most cryptocurrency investors would say,
no, you have to hodl.
But for me, I actually agree with Graham. I don't think anyone should guilt you into holding your cryptocurrency when you have an opportunity to cash in on some profit and then buy back in when there's a pullback. The whole purpose of investing is to build your financial portfolio. You have to make the choice on whether or not it's the right move for you. Once again, no financial advice here. That's the stance that I take. I don't listen to all of these influencers. I take in what they say, I observe, I listen, I use my brain and calculate what I think is going to be the best decision, and then I make that. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Graham Stephan, a millionaire with a portfolio value of $6.5 million at the age of 30, has finally bought into Bitcoin. So with all that out of the way, thank you all for stopping by. If you haven't yet, make sure you smash the like button. Of course, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, because I am coming out with a ton more content in 2021. Specifically, the next video that I'll be coming out with is going over the potential Bitcoin bubble, some of the factors that are gonna play in behind it. Also, I am doing a huge giveaway. Make sure you check out that video. You could win everything from $500 in crypto to a pair of Beats Solo Pro headphones and some Committed 3D swag. Check that out. The video will be down in the description. Also, I still absolutely love crypto.com. If you sign up for the Ruby Red Visa and stake 5,000 CRO tokens, you and I both get $25 worth of CRO tokens absolutely free. A link for that will be down in the description as well if you want to try out the Ruby Red. I did just get the Frosted Rose Gold card, so I'm getting Amazon Prime for free, Netflix for free, Spotify Premium for free. I'll be reviewing that video coming in the next few weeks as well. So with all that out of the way, thanks for stopping by, everybody. Once again, my name is Chris with Committed 3D Tech, and we'll catch you next time.